All right, listeners, I stayed in a fancy overwater villa in the Maldives. I flew business class halfway around the world and didn't pay anywhere near what you might think. In this episode, I'm going to break down exactly how I turned this over $35,000 luxury trip into way less using a combination of points, strategy, and a whole lot of planning. Plus, I'll spill the tea on what was worth it and what wasn't. Keep listening as I delve right into the details. Hello, and welcome to the Wealth Minded MD podcast with your money best friend. I'm Dr. Lisha Taylor. And of course, I'm here to help you build wealth and make good money decisions so you can create the life you desire with more control over your time.
Lisha, can we talk about life insurance for a second? Because I feel like this is one of those things that people either avoid or overcomplicate.
Exactly. And honestly, a lot of us think we need these big, complicated, expensive policies when in reality, most people just need a solid term life insurance policy that actually protects their family.
And that's why we love working with PKA Insurance Group. They're independent brokers, which means that they're not tied to one company. They shop across all major carriers to find you the best option.
And what I really appreciate is that they're not trying to upsell you. They'll actually tell you what you do need, what you don't need, which is rare in the insurance world.
Exactly. Whether you're getting coverage for the first time or you already have a policy, they'll review what you have and let you know if it's solid or if there's something better or more affordable out there.
So if you've been putting off life insurance or wondering if you actually have the right policy or if your current policy is a good fit for you, this is your sign.
Reach out to PKA Insurance Group at pkainsurance.com or call 1-800-258-1018 to get started. And don't forget to tell him that we sent you. Also, the link is right in the show notes for your convenience. So click the link and get started today.
All right, everybody. I just got back from vacation and actually another work trip. So it's so crazy. I've been in 5 different time zones over the last 8 days. So I'm a little jet lagged, but trying to get my bearings. As I talked about in the teaser, I just got back from this amazing vacation in the Maldives, and I cannot wait to tell you all about it. You may have noticed that you don't hear the lovely Brittany Halford's voice on this episode, and that's because she's off doing one of the million things that she is doing, whether it is juggling mom life, handling one of her 10 different businesses, launching a couple of cool projects that I'm sure she can't wait to tell you about. And so I am going to do this episode solo. So bear with me here. This is my first solo podcast episode. I hope you enjoy it. And since I just got back from this really cool travel trip, I figured I would use this episode to tell you all about it. I know in the past I've talked about points and miles and how I put purchases on credit cards and accumulate these points and then transfer out the points and then book these amazing flights and hotels. But for this episode, I'm going to delve a little bit deeper into the trip that I just took to the Maldives. I hope you enjoy it. I hope that you'll kind of have a good trip review of what it's like to go to the Maldives and how you can plan it and how you may be also able to turn really expensive trips into much cheaper and much affordable vacations. All right, let's get started. Okay, so first things first, as I mentioned, I went to the Maldives. It's really crazy because I think it first starts off with why did I go there and why did I want to go? And if I'm being completely honest, I was having a conversation with my boyfriend and he randomly mentioned, Lisha, one of the things I've always wanted to do is stay in an overwater bungalow. And I was like, what is that? I don't even think I knew really what that was. And he was like, the villas that are over the water, right? And I was like, I wonder what that is. And I'm in a travel group and lots of people, go to these fancy different locations. And I started doing a little bit of research and I found out that overwater bungalows are pretty common in places like the Maldives or in Bora Bora. And to me, that just seemed so fancy. I think I thought it was one of those places that only rich people went. And so I don't even think it was like on my bucket list or something that I thought was feasible for me to do. But I'm in a travel group with lots of other female physicians who have traveled to these places, who have gone to the Maldives or gone to Bora Bora, gone to Fiji or all of these kind of far out places. And I thought, thought, well, if they can do it, then I can do it. I happened to start searching on the Maldives. I saw that not only had a lot of people gone to the Maldives, but I had started to really take a look at their photos and their videos and their reviews of the trip. And there was this one post in there that really caught my eye. It was this woman who I think she went to the Maldives with her husband, and she had posted these amazing photos and videos of where she stayed in the Maldives. And she happened to stay at the Waldorf Astoria in the Maldives. Normally, when you book a room at a hotel, it's like a big building and you're one of like several thousand people that happen to be staying in one particular room in a hotel. But in the Maldives, especially at the Waldorf Astoria, things were different. Instead of staying in a room in a large building, everybody essentially had their own house, or what they call an overwater villa. So it was like, okay, we have our own house on the water, and it's not just like a one room house. Essentially, it looked like a mini apartment on the water. Like it had multiple rooms. There was a living space, there was a bedroom space, there were multiple closets, there was an indoor and an outdoor shower, there was an infinity pool, and the infinity pool was situated over the beach water, and the water was clear. There were trees surrounding the area on land, and there were lots of restaurants. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I would love to go there. And so that's kind of how this whole trip was planted, of my boyfriend happening to mention that he wanted to stay in this overwater villa, me doing a little bit of research, me looking at posts and reviews and videos of people there and saying, I want to go there. And so what started off as something that he wanted to do quickly morphed into something that I really wanted to do. And one of the things that I discovered was that not every resort in the Maldives looked like the one that I had saw in that one particular post from that woman's video. Some of the different resorts are situated a little bit differently, but I specifically wanted an overwater villa. I wanted to stay in what was essentially my own house over the water. And so I knew that not only did I want to go to the Maldives at this point, but I particularly wanted to stay at the Waldorf Astoria at the Maldives. And so that's kind of like how this trip got planted and what I wanted to do and why I wanted to go there. The next thing was setting my priorities early and trying to figure out how I was going to start planning this trip. So one of the things that became quickly apparent to me was that this place was extremely expensive. So most people, I think, when they travel and they are looking for a hotel, they will then go to the hotel's website and they will look at how much the hotel costs per night, and they will either pay cash or reserve it or what have you. Well, when I tried to do that, I kind of got sticker shock, because in the Maldives, specifically at the Waldorf Astoria, the villas are over $2,000 a night. In fact, when I last checked, I think the cheapest villa that you could book was around $2,500 a night, and they went all the way up to around $5,000 a night. And I don't know about you and the way that you travel, but I have never paid that much for a hotel stay before, especially per night. Like that just seemed outlandish to me. Even as a physician who was pretty good with money, I just couldn't fathom spending that much in cash per night. So I knew quickly, like, all right, that is really expensive. How are all of these people able to go there? And I discovered that they were able to book the hotel room on points or using something called free night certificates. I did a little bit of research and I discovered that I could essentially book a stay in this overwater villa at the Waldorf Astoria, in these villas that cost well over $2,000 per night. I could do this, quote unquote, for free if I had these free night certificates or if I booked the room on points. Then I started to delve into, okay, how in the world can I do this? How can I accumulate these free night certificates for this extremely luxurious hotel? How can I accumulate the amount of points needed in order to book that hotel? And so I realized, okay, from the hotel standpoint, if I want to stay at the Waldorf Astoria, I'm going to have to accumulate these points and I'm going to have to get something called these free night certificates, which I'll talk about in a second. The next thing that I knew was that the Maldives is literally across the world. I happened to Google how long the flight was from the United States to the Maldives. And one, you can't fly direct. You know, you're going to have a connecting flight. But in total flying time, it was going to be like over 17 hours. And I thought to myself, okay, if I'm going to be flying somewhere for 17 hours, there's no way that I want to fly in economy. I mean, no shade to people who are fine flying in economy. But at this stage in my life, I just could not fathom sitting upright in a chair that barely leaned back with somebody's seat essentially in my lap for 17 hours. And so that was not the way that I wanted to travel. And so I knew pretty quickly that I wanted business class flights. And for those who have never traveled business class internationally, business class flights are amazing because essentially your seat turns into a bed. And so you are able to lay flat on the plane and sleep on the plane. Plus, you get better service. And if you're somebody who drinks alcohol, there is more luxurious champagne and drinks and alcohol and teas. The service is better. The food is better. But what really mattered to me was the ability to have a lay flat seat. And so I knew that I wanted that kind of seat if I was going to fly for 17 plus hours across the world. And so I I knew another priority to me, along with staying at the Waldorf, was to secure business class flights. I was like, okay, how am I going to do this? When I do a quick Google search of the cost of a business class flight from the United States to the Maldives, it was at least $5,000. I think the cheapest I saw was around $5,000 one way. And so if I wanted a round trip, it was going to cost well over $10,000 per person. And again, I am not the kind of person that is going to pay $10,000 for a round trip flight to the Maldives. I'm sorry. I don't have that level of disposable income in my life at this point in time. Maybe at some point in the future, I can just shell out 10K, no problem for a flight, but that is not the case right now. And so just how I knew pretty quickly that if I wanted to stay at the Waldorf, I was going to need to accumulate these free night certificates and accumulate some points. I also knew that if I was going to have business class flights to the Maldives, that I was also going to need to accumulate the right amount of points and book the seats far in advance. And so now let's kind of delve into how I did that. So I will start it into how I booked the flights. One of the things that I had learned was that if you want to secure business class flights, the flights are cheaper the earlier you book them. And most airlines release flight seats around a year in advance. So 365 days in advance, 360 days in advance. Some airlines are like 330 days in advance, but essentially you really have to plan this trip about a year in advance in order to get the cheapest priced business class seats on points. Now, again, if you're in the financial position where you can pay cash, you don't have to worry about this. But I was not in that position. So I knew I was going to need to pay points. And I also knew that I didn't have a gazillion credit card points. It's just me. I'm not married. I don't have children. And so I don't have a ton of expenses that allow me to accumulate millions and millions of points each year. That is just not the kind of position that I'm in. And so I knew that since I was working with a limited amount of credit card points, that I was going to need to book the flights whenever the flights were released for the cheapest amount of points, which means I was going to need to essentially secure these flights the minute that they dropped. The next thing that I needed to realize, or the next thing that I did realize, was that not every airline flies to the Maldives. If you haven't traveled as much internationally, that may be a shock to you as it was to me, that not every airline flies to every destination. Even though certain airlines have what we call airline partners, sometimes you can't even find a seat on an airline partner flight. As somebody who lives in Atlanta, where Delta is a huge hub, I book a lot of my domestic travel on Delta Airlines. I have status on Delta. It's easier. There's a ton of flights in and out of Atlanta. And so that's usually how I roll. But for international flights and destinations, sometimes things are different, as was the case with this trip. Delta does not fly to the Maldives, or at least during the dates and the times that I was looking, there were no flights available to the Maldives. So then my next problem was trying to figure out which airlines actually fly to the Maldives. And I discovered a few of the international airlines fly to the Maldives. One of those is Qatar Airways. They actually fly out of Atlanta. One airline is Singapore Airlines. One is Emirates. One is Etihad. And so a few of those airlines, like the ones I mentioned, fly from the United States to the Maldives. And so I started thinking and looking and searching, all right, out of those airlines, which ones would be feasible for me to book? The next thing that I had to figure out was, do these airlines fly out of Atlanta? And one of the things that you learn really quickly in the points and miles world is that if you're going to book a business class flight from the United States to some remote island like the Maldives, then you may not be able to secure that flight from your current city. So even though I live in a pretty major cities like Atlanta, only Qatar Airlines actually flew out of Atlanta. Singapore Airlines and Emirates, they don't fly to the Maldives from Atlanta. They fly to the Maldives from other major cities on the West Coast or in the Northeast, like New York City or LA or San Francisco. So for me, it was like, okay, which airline am I going to utilize to actually secure this flight? And what city in the United States do they fly from? And then it was the reality that I was going to have to get myself from Atlanta to whatever city in the United States that these airlines flew out of, and then fly to the Maldives from there. Maybe it's a little bit crazy or whatever, but I really had this strong desire to travel on Singapore Airlines. And if I'm being fully honest and transparent, I knew that I wanted to fly on Singapore Airlines to the Maldives because I had always wanted to try that flight product. One of my favorite movies is the movie Crazy Rich Asians. In that movie, in the beginning, before she discovers that her boyfriend is extremely wealthy, they end up taking a trip to Singapore on Singapore Airlines. And in the movie, it shows what the first class product on Singapore Airlines looks like. And they essentially have this huge bed on the plane, and there's this luxurious bar, and they get all this fancy service. And so I had always kind of wanted to try that. And so I'd heard great things about Singapore Airlines. I'd watched the movie Crazy Rich Asians, which featured the airline. And I thought, to myself, wow, I really want to fly on that product. I also knew that even if I flew from the United States to the Maldives, it wouldn't be a direct flight. Like there was going to be a connecting flight in some city. And so each of these airlines, Qatar, Emirates, Singapore, they have what's called a hub. Think of it like a huge city where a lot of their flights fly in and out of. And that hub is usually international. So for Qatar Airways, their hub is in Doha, which is a big city in Qatar. For Emirates, their hub is in Dubai. And for Singapore Airlines, as one could guess, their hub is in Singapore. And so I also knew as a part of this trip, I was going to have a connecting flight in one of these hub cities. And I thought, what hub city would be cool to visit? And so for me, I had never been to Singapore. And so I knew that, okay, if I fly Singapore Airlines on my way to the Maldives, I could stop in the country of Singapore and I might be able to check out the country of Singapore for a couple of days before continuing on my trip to the Maldives. So long story short, I knew pretty quickly that I was going to get our outbound flights from the United States to the Maldives via Singapore Airlines. I also had this thought that, okay, once we come back from the Maldives, I'm probably going to be tired and I'm probably going to want to get back to Atlanta as quickly as possible. And so for me, I thought, what airline will get me the quickest back to Atlanta? And that answer was easy. It was Qatar Airlines because it was the shortest route to Atlanta. Qatar Airways would fly from the Maldives to their hub in Doha, Qatar, and then from their hub directly to Atlanta. If I chose any other airline, I would have 3 flights versus choosing Qatar, I would only have 2 flights. And so I was like, okay, on the way to the Maldives, I'm going to fly Singapore Airlines. I've always wanted to try their product and I've never been to Singapore, so I want to check that out. And on our way back from the Maldives, I'm going to fly Qatar Airlines because that would get me back to Atlanta the quickest. Pretty quickly, I knew, all right, outbound Singapore, inbound back, I'm going to fly Qatar. And so then I had to search, when do each of these airlines release reward seats on points? And how many points am I going to need in order to book these flights? I had Googled, asked others, and figured out that Singapore Airlines, I can't remember exactly how many days in advance that they released their flights, but they had a good amount of business class flights available. As long as I had the right amount of points, it wouldn't be too hard to kind of secure those flights. Versus Qatar Airlines, it was a whole other story. Their business class product only released what we call like 2 really, really low priced seats called Saver Awards for half the price as all of the other flights in business class. And so I knew that when it came to the Qatar Airways flight, I was going to have to book those flights right when the flights dropped down to the minute. Versus Singapore Airlines, it was a little bit more leeway. And so long story short, I ended up Googling and figuring out, I think Qatar Airlines released their seats 361 days in advance at like 8 p.m. Eastern time. And so I was literally logged into the website, pressing, purchase right when the flights dropped. That's how kind of anal I was. And I was able to get 2 business class flights from the Maldives to Atlanta for, I think it was 85,000 points each. And there were 2 of us, so 2 flights for 85,000 points a piece. And then I think I paid about $500 per person in taxes, fees, and fuel charges. And so I was able to secure those flights. Yay. And then I went to the Singapore Airlines website and I was able to secure as business class flights on Singapore Airlines from San Francisco, which is one of the Singapore Airlines hubs in the United States, to the Maldives. And I think I paid, maybe it was like 150,000 points per person for those flights. And the Singapore Airlines flights had much less taxes and fees. I think I paid $100 per person in taxes, fees, and fuel charges. So our Singapore Airlines flights, total of 300,000 points for the both of us. And then our Qatar Airways flights, I think it was like 170,000 points total. And so was able to secure those flights. Now, the Singapore Airlines flights left out of San Francisco. So I also used some of the Delta Sky Miles that I had to book our domestic flights from Atlanta to San Francisco the day prior so that we could then fly out on Singapore Airlines. All right, that was kind of a lot, but I wanted to kind of break down like how I planned and secured those flights. And this may seem like a lot of work. You may be listening to this going, oh my God, this is like way too much information. But I think it's helpful to know because one of the things that I want to make clear is that I saved a ton of money by booking it on points. I mentioned that I paid 170,000 points total for the both of us for our Qatar Airways flights. It was 170,000 points plus $1,000 total in taxes and fees for the both of us. But those flights on Qatar cost over $10,000 in cash. And all I paid was 170,000 credit card points and $1,000 in cash, right? So I was able to save a ton of money. And just to put this into perspective, you can get 170,000 credit card points by opening up one American Express credit card and hitting the sign up bonus. So I think right now you can get an American Express Business Gold card. And I think the sign up bonus is like 175,000 points. And I think the annual fee on that card is like $400. So I paid $400 for an American Express Business Gold card, met the sign up bonus, and was able to get 175,000 American Express points. And then I could transfer those 175,000 American Express points to Qatar Airways and secure those flights. So somebody else paid $10,000. I paid $400 in an annual fee on that credit card, met the sign up bonus, and then paid $1,000 in taxes and fees. So I paid around $1,400 for 2 business class one-way flights versus somebody else paid $10,000, just to put this into perspective. So yes, it was a lot of planning, but I saved what, $8,000? And to me, that's worth it. For Singapore Airlines flights, those business class flights were a bit more expensive. In full transparency, they do release cheaper business class points flights for Singapore Airlines. The reason ours were slightly more expensive is because I wanted a 2-night layover in Singapore to explore the city. If I did not want that free stopover or layover in Singapore, then what would have happened is I would have flown from San Francisco to Singapore and then a few hours later boarded a flight from Singapore to the Maldives. But I figured if I'm going to be all the way around the world, if I'm going to have a layover anyway in Singapore, I might as well make that layover last a couple of nights and get a chance to explore that country that I had never been to. And so that flight cost me a little bit more in points. Now, that one cost 300,000 points total. Again, right now, you can open up an American Express Business Platinum card and the sign-up bonus is around 250 or 300,000 credit card points. So again, opening one card, paying the annual fee for just that 1 year for that one card would net you the amount of points needed to then book that flight. And so for me, again, it's a lot of planning. It took a lot of effort. I had to research a lot, but I saved thousands of dollars. And now I am able to fly business class around the world. I paid less for our business class flights in cash than most people pay for economy flights. And to me, like that is a huge selling point for points and miles and credit card points. Like I know this can sound overwhelming. You may be bored already with hearing the details of how I planned and secured these flights, but I think it is really important to kind of emphasize how much money I'm saving by doing all of this planning, how much money I'm saving by accumulating credit card points and then transferring them out directly into Singapore Airlines or into Qatar Airways in order to book these luxurious flights. And the flights were worth it. Oh my goodness. The food on Singapore Airlines was exquisite. They have this option before you even board that basically allows you to book the cook or book the chef. And they had 30 different meal choices that you could select from and they cooked it for you. Oh my goodness. Singapore Airlines was probably the best food I've ever had on a flight, like bar none. And oh my gosh, the drinks were amazing. I tried their signature Singapore Sling alcoholic beverage, and that was delicious. When we walk on the plane, you are greeted with champagne or orange juice if you don't drink. The seat turns into a bed. It was so freaking spacious. They had a huge TV right in front of me, and I could watch all the movies and things that I wanted to. Oh my goodness, what a very, very, very pleasant flight experience. Like, it was amazing. And like I said, I saved so much money. I would have never, I don't want to say never, but I wouldn't have been able to afford comfortably paying cash for those flights. And so just being able to utilize points and miles to book a more luxurious travel experience was amazing. I know for a lot of people, when they're traveling internationally, especially for that long, they either hate the flight and they feel like the flight is something that they have to get through. They're like, my back is going to hurt. I'm not going to be able to sleep. It's going to be uncomfortable. But if I could just get through the flight portion, then I'll enjoy my vacation. And for me, the flight becomes part of the vacation. The fact that I can travel in luxury, I'm one of the first people to board the plane. I have plenty of overhead space for my luggage. I have all the alcoholic drinks I want, all the tea that I want, all the food I want, all the desserts that I want. They're serving you tons of meals throughout the flight. I can sleep on the flight like I'm not jet lagged when I land. And the fact that I'm paying less for these business class flights than I would have paid for the economy flights that would have been way more uncomfortable. To me, all of this is worth it, even just for a more pleasant travel experience. All right, so that's enough about the flights. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Waldorf and securing the hotel. So I mentioned it has huge overwater villas. Everybody essentially has their own apartment on the water with an infinity pool and just like, oh my gosh, the most pleasant and luxurious stay. If you've not seen what the overwater villas and the Waldorf Astoria Maldives look like, please Google it. It is amazing. And I knew that I wanted to stay there. Now I mentioned that the cheapest villa was over $2,500 a night, which I don't know about you, is not something I was willing to pay. But you could get them for free by accumulating credit card points or free night certificates. All right, so let's talk about the free night certificates. So the Waldorf Astoria is a Hilton property. So the brand Hilton has a few luxurious properties, two of which are the Waldorf Astoria and the Conrad. Just like Marriott hotels, I think that's like the Four Seasons and the Ritz. Maybe I think those are Marriott hotels and those luxurious lines. While the Waldorf Astoria, which is where I wanted to say, is a Hilton property. Hilton sometimes offers these free night certificates where you can redeem the free night certificate for any hotel stay that you want, as long as there is what they call standard award availability released. As long as they have some rooms that you can book for their standard award release, right, which is their kind of lower price rooms, as long as they have those rooms available, you can book them using Hilton points, or you can book them for free using a free night certificate. So I was like, oh my gosh, how do I get these free night certificates? Usually you get the free night certificates by signing up for a Hilton credit card. And sometimes during certain times of the year, signing up for one of their Hilton credit cards comes with a free night certificate. So similar to other credit card lines, Hilton has different tiers of credit cards, if you will, like their most premium card, which is the Hilton Aspire card, their mid-tier card, which is the Hilton Surpass card. I think they have a no-fee annual card and maybe like a business credit card. Well, at the time that I had opened up a Hilton credit card, their Surpass card, which is kind of like their mid-tier card that has an annual fee, I think of like $100 or so, said if you spend $3,000 on the card within the next 3 or 4 months, you not only got this bolus of points, I think it was 130,000 Hilton points, but you also earned a free night certificate. And then that credit card also had language that said if you spend $15,000 on this credit card within the calendar year, you will earn another free night certificate. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I could essentially put my expenses that I was already going to spend on this Hilton card and essentially earn 2 free night certificates. Like what? And then I could redeem these free night certificates for a $2,500 per night hotel stay. What? Sign me up. And so immediately got that card, met the sign up bonus, ended up putting $15,000 of expenses within a calendar year on that card. And so I was quickly able to accumulate a couple of free night certificates. And I also started to accumulate Hilton points. Another thing that I discovered is that American Express credit card points, you can transfer them directly to Hilton at a 1-to-2 ratio. So 1 American Express credit card point is equivalent to 2 Hilton points. And sometimes during the year, they have a transfer bonus where 1 American Express credit card point will transfer to Hilton at a ratio of 2.4 or 2.3. So essentially, I could transfer some of my American Express points directly to Hilton and get this bolus of Hilton points. I could also continue to spend money on the Hilton credit card and accumulate Hilton points. Hilton also has various deals throughout the year where you can purchase Hilton points for half a cent a piece, meaning you could purchase 100,000 Hilton points for, I think it's like $500 or something like that. These points were pretty easy to accumulate or purchase. And at the time that I was looking at the Waldorf Astoria Maldives, it cost about 200,000 Hilton points per night to stay in these overwater villas. And so long story short, I was able to book 4 nights at the Waldorf Astoria Maldives using a combination of Hilton points and free night certificates. And in full transparency, I earned a lot of the Hilton points. I think I earned maybe 200,000 Hilton points or so. And I had maybe 1 or 2 free night certificates that I had used at that time. And then I also purchased some Hilton points. I think I spent $1,000 purchasing Hilton points. So essentially I paid a little over $1,000 out of pocket to book 4 nights in a hotel that was costing over $2,500 a night. What would have cost well over 10 grand, I spent maybe $1,200. So that is like a testament again to the power of planning and the power of credit card points and being able to utilize them and accumulate them and redeem them for sort of these luxurious stays. Now, in full transparency, booking this hotel was not easy. Even though I had the free night certificates and even though I had the points, as you might imagine, booking a stay for free at the Waldorf Astoria Maldives is something that a lot of people would want to do. And a lot of people have these free night certificates and have Hilton points that they want to redeem at this hotel, right? This is one of the best redemption values that you can have. And so one of the things that you have to do is book the hotel right when it releases. So similarly to how I had to book our Qatar flights right when they released, I had to book our Hilton stay right when those rooms were released by Hilton. They are not released on a predictable schedule. It's not like they release all the rooms 365 days in advance. That would have been easier. Hilton sort of releases rooms between 8 and 10 months in advance, and you don't know what day they're going to drop. And because it's such a property that many people want to book, if you don't book it, like essentially the day or 2 that they drop, they're all going to be gone. And so as you can imagine, it was very stressful. I essentially had to set alerts for myself so that I would be notified whenever these rooms became available. I frequently checked on various travel groups because usually when these rooms become available, someone will post in the travel groups that they're available. And then I just checked every morning. Every morning when I got up for 2 straight months, I logged onto the Hilton site and I checked to see if the rooms had dropped. This sounds very anal, but if you want to book, like me, a hotel stay that is over $10,000 in cash for essentially free, then you are going to get up early and you're going to check the website. It doesn't take long. I think I spent a minute or two checking the website to see if the rooms had dropped, but that's sort of what you have to do if you want to save $10,000. And for me, that was worth it. Long story short, someone ended up posting in our travel group that I happened to see, I think when I was at work, actually, that the rooms had been released. I stopped what I was doing. I called Hilton and I booked those rooms. You can usually book them online, but because I was using a free night certificate, you actually have to call and speak to an associate in order to book a room using a free night certificate. So long story short, lots of stress. They sell out fast. I was nervous, but I was able to secure 4 nights at the Waldorf Astoria Maldives. And so at this point, I've secured our business class flights. Yay. I've secured our hotel stay, which is awesome. And so I was very, very proud of myself. I did all of this about a year in advance. So lots of work, but I thought I was smooth sailing. I just had a few other logistics. One was figuring out, I wanted to stay in Singapore a couple of nights. So where are we going to stay in Singapore? I happen to have an American Express Platinum credit card, which comes with a perk of something called the Amex Fine Hotels and Resorts program. At the time of this recording, at least, one of the perks is that they will essentially give you $300 off of a one-night hotel stay within their Fine Hotels and Resorts program. You also get a $100 property credit at that hotel, and you get free breakfast for 2 at that hotel. So pretty amazing, right? $300 off a hotel stay with free breakfast plus a property credit. And at the time that I was booking this, I had 2 American Express Platinum cards. I knew I was going to stay 2 nights in Singapore. Great. I was going to book 1 night on one card, 1 night on the other card using this Amex Fine Hotels and Resorts credit. I was able to find a really nice hotel in Singapore. I stayed at the Conrad, which, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the Hilton luxurious properties. So I stayed at the Conrad in Marina Bay in Singapore. Amazing hotel. I booked it using this Amex Fine Hotels and Resorts program. I think the total cost of the hotel was maybe like $450. And so because I got $300 off per night, I only paid about $150 per night for this hotel in cash. That also came with free breakfast, which was literally one of the best breakfasts that I've had at a hotel. Oh my goodness, this breakfast was amazing. And so, yeah, I got the free breakfast. My boyfriend and I ended up using the property credit for dinner at one of the restaurants on the property. And so, yeah, I mean, this was pretty amazing. Another thing to note, some other logistics is like when you book a stay in the Maldives, the airport in the Maldives is like on one island, but every other resort, it's on its own island. So if you book a stay at like the Ritz, that's on its own island. If you book a stay at the Waldorf, it's on its own island. If you book a stay at the Four Seasons, it's on its own island. And so essentially you have to figure out how you're going to get yourself from the airport, the island that the airport is on, to the island that your hotel resort is on. For most hotels, they will provide transfer. So they will essentially either transfer you by seaplane or by yacht to the resort. And whether you take a seaplane or a yacht really depends on how far away the resort island is from the airport. For the Waldorf, they offered a yacht, and there was no other way to get to the hotel but by taking their yacht transfer. And unfortunately, that yacht transfer is extremely expensive. I think it's like $900 per person round trip. So you essentially almost spend $2,000 in cash getting transported from the airport to the island and the Maldives. There was no other way to get there, right? It's not like I could say, oh, I'm going to take an Uber instead. Or it's not like I could say, oh, I'm going to book my own private transfer. Like you have no other way to get there. We ended up paying that cost for the yacht transfer. So that was a little bit of a bummer that there was no cheaper option, but it is what it is. The other thing I want to mention is like literally a few weeks before we went to the Maldives, there ended up being a war in the Middle East. So apparently there was a lot of fighting and there's an entire war in the Middle East that I did not anticipate. And so I had to change our flights. I had to change our Qatar Airlines flights because Qatar Airlines has the hub in Doha, and there was a lot of fighting in Doha. There was, like I said, a war in the Middle East. A lot of the flights were being canceled anyways. So I ended up about a few weeks before our trip booking backup flights, which we ended up using on Singapore Airlines. So I just ended up booking back through Singapore Airlines. Fun fact, Singapore Airlines is like one of the only airlines that flies from the Maldives to the United States and avoids the Middle East. And so I couldn't secure affordable business class flights that late in the game. So we ended up securing premium economy flights, which actually were not bad. I called Singapore Airlines and like begged them to help me find affordable premium economy flights. The agent was lovely. We ended up picking seats in the front row of a premium economy, which was fantastic. There was a ton of legroom because we were in the front row of the premium economy section. And so we were able to completely stretch out our legs and rest our legs on like the footrest thing in the front. And so that was amazing. The seats leaned really far back. We still had amazing food and great service. And I actually slept a good amount on the way back. And so despite the fact that it wasn't a business class flight, I was pleasantly surprised at how comfortable the Singapore Airlines premium economy flight was. Now, that being said, I still spent a lot of money and points for that flight. I think our premium economy flights booking at the last minute were like 160,000 credit card points per person. And that was more than what I paid for our business class flights. So just another testament to like booking business class flights in advance can even be cheaper than what you would pay for economy or premium economy. That being said, I wanted to be safe, clearly. I did not want to die on this trip. And so we ended up booking these backup premium economy flights on Singapore Airlines, which we ended up using and actually were not bad at all. My experience in Singapore. So we spent a couple of nights in Singapore. I wanted to check out the country. I had never been there before. And I didn't want to make like a strict itinerary. Like I just wanted to go with the flow. There was so much planning involved with this trip. The last thing I wanted to do was strictly plan our Singapore experience. And so we just went with the flow. We ended up taking a taxi from the airport when we landed to our hotel in Singapore. And we asked our Uber driver some highlights of the city, which he quickly explained to us: the Marina Bay Sands area, light shows, the famous gardens, the Marina Bay Sands Mall, which is really amazing. Overall, I found the city super clean. The food was amazing. I would absolutely go back. I had a fantastic time. We ended up walking from our hotel to a lot of the main sites in Singapore, and it was lovely. So 10 out of 10, no notes. I would totally go back to Singapore, and I'm very, very glad that we did a layover in Singapore. All right, Maldives. Now we're getting to the main event finally. But my experience in the Maldives was amazing. Wow. From the yacht transfer, right, from the airport in the Maldives to our Waldorf Astoria resort hotel stay in the overwater villa, we did the yacht transfer, right, to get to the resort. And on the yacht transfer, it was very nice. They offered us champagne, snacks, drinks, all the things. I think it was us plus maybe 5 other people. And the yacht actually had like bedrooms on the boat. So if you didn't want to like chill in the main area, you could essentially sleep, or you could go up to the top and like have the wind blow through your hair, which we did for a little bit. The yacht was really nice. In terms of the overwater villa, oh my goodness, seeing it in person was even better than the photos and the videos. Like indoor and outdoor showers. There was a huge infinity pool. There was swing couches and lots of lounge chairs. I mean, this place was big enough for like 8 people. And the fact that it was just for us 2 was amazing. When I booked this hotel, I actually booked 2 queen beds. So fun fact about me, I like to have 2 beds in a hotel stay because I like to have one bed that I sleep in at night. That is essentially like the clean bed. And then I like to have another bed that I lounge in during the day. And so, yeah, I actually booked 2 queen beds. But anyway, that was amazing. When we got to the Waldorf lounge area, we were connected with our personal concierge. And this is the person that is essentially responsible for booking anything. If you want a restaurant reservation, you text them via WhatsApp and they make it. If you have a question about anything, any experience, any cost, if you want them to take you to one part of the island to the other, they will do that. This island was super big. And so they essentially provided free bikes where you could bike places, or you could call your concierge and he would come get you in the equivalent of like a golf cart and take you around to various places. And so that was really nice. I text this concierge 10 times a day, from like restaurant reservation ideas to like things to do. And so that was amazing. Our concierge was so amazing that he actually upgraded us. I had essentially booked the cheapest room on points because that's what I could book using a free night certificate, but we ended up getting upgraded and our concierge made this happen. So we ended up getting upgraded into the grand overwater villa, which I think is one of their most expensive properties on the island. And when I checked, it cost $4,800 per night. And we got upgraded into that. Now, granted, we got upgraded into that, I think like our last 2 nights. And so we did have to like pack our stuff and move villas, but that was a very small quote unquote price to pay to move into this even more luxurious villa on the other side of the island. I'm so grateful. It was complimentary. I didn't have to pay anything for the upgrade. Our concierge made it happen. Thank you. Some of the activities that we did in the Maldives, I know that the Maldives is sort of branded as like this honeymoon vacation. I can see why. Because everyone has their own overwater villa, you really don't see other people unless you're at a restaurant eating or doing some sort of activity. But for the most part, because the villa is so huge and you have your own infinity pool and you have direct access to the beach on your own, you really don't have to talk to anybody. And so I can see why it's branded as a honeymoon sort of destination. But that being said, we still had a fantastic time. We ended up going snorkeling. We did what we call adventure snorkeling. So they took us out on a boat and we went snorkeling in the ocean and saw all the beautiful reefs and like turtles and like fish. And it was amazing. We ended up riding jet skis. And so that was like super fun. We went to the spa and got these very nice massages. They had a ton of different spa options and we got massages. We ended up doing a free workout class. The Waldorf Astoria has a really nice gym and they offer free workout classes. And we did like a boxing class for free. And we went to the gym a couple times. My boyfriend likes to play basketball. So we rented out the basketball courts and played basketball. pickleball. If you're into tennis or pickleball, they also have those courts that you can rent out. We even did a free photo shoot. The Waldorf Astoria offers a free photo shoot. They give you a free complimentary photo and then they charge you for other photos. And so in terms of activities, we had a great time. We did a lot of lounging, but we did do some activities, as I mentioned. Each day, because of our status, we got free breakfast. So I, at the time, was a Hilton Gold member. I thought about getting a different credit card to upgrade to the highest status, which would be Hilton Diamond, but we ended up having a great time. I don't really think that I needed the Diamond status, to be honest with you. One of the perks of being a Hilton Gold member, which I got by virtue of having that Hilton credit card, was that we got free breakfast every day. And that ended up saving us thousands of dollars because one thing you should know is the food in the Maldives is incredibly expensive. They have to import everything. And so if you want a cheeseburger, that's probably going to cost you like $50. Like, no lie. On the menu would be like $35. And then there's like a 27% surcharge between mandatory gratuity and taxes and fees that's added to the cost of everything. And so if you're purchasing an experience that's $250, just know in your head it's actually $330. Just putting that into perspective. So anyway, us getting free breakfast every day was a huge cost savings, and the breakfast was exquisite. Anything you want, they could do. So there was a breakfast buffet, but then they also had an a la carte menu that was also free, and you could order whatever you wanted. And boy, we took advantage of that. We ordered avocado toast, pancakes, waffles, French toast. I ordered like an omelet or fried egg each morning. The buffet already had bacon and hash browns. They even had any sort of noodle dish that you wanted because, I mean, we are in the Maldives, and so you could make any sort of noodle dish that you wanted. Like, oh my gosh, champagne was free flowing in the breakfast. Every day at breakfast, we probably had 8 plates between the both of us. They also had all these different freshly made smoothies and fruit juices and green juices and watermelon juices and like, oh my goodness. So we really filled up on breakfast since it was free. And I think we only ate lunch one of the days that we were there. We got so full from breakfast that we didn't really need to eat lunch. And so that ended up saving us a ton of money. And we only really had to pay for dinner. Now, the Waldorf Astoria Maldives has really fancy restaurants and they were amazing. But we figured, hey, since we've traveled all the way to the Maldives, we really want to spare no expense when it comes to really great food. And so we booked stays at 4 of the different restaurants. We thought they were all amazing. A lot of times, all the restaurants have like a chef's menu where you pay like $200 per person and you will get this 10-course menu. We did that for 2 of the 4 restaurants. The other restaurants, we just ordered a la carte and we tried a bunch of different stuff. I will be very honest. We splurged when it came to dinner food and we probably spent around $500 every dinner. So I know that's a lot, but we really wanted to splurge. We didn't really spend much on the hotel stay. We didn't really spend much on the flights. We weren't spending any money on breakfast. And so we figured, you know what? Let's splurge on dinner. And I'm glad we did because, oh my goodness, it was amazing. And so I'm trying to think, what else should you know about the Maldives? Man, we lounged a lot. We really got sunburned. We had the infinity pool in our villa, our overwater villa. The beach water was so clear. Yes, the food was expensive, but it was incredibly fresh and so good. We loved the snorkeling. We loved the jet skis. We did our fancy photo shoot. We relaxed a lot. It did rain a couple of the days that we were there. One day it rained. It was just a little drizzle and then it cleared up really quickly. One day it was pretty cloudy and kind of rained all day, but we took that day and we relaxed. And that was the day that we got our massages. And that was the day that we kind of chilled. And so, yeah, that was amazing. Another thing is that I had booked our flights from the Maldives very late at night. I think our flight left at the Maldives at like 11 p.m. And Waldorf Astoria was so nice. They let us stay in our grand overwater villa that they upgraded us for free into until 8 p.m. So we didn't have to leave our hotel until 8 p.m. So we essentially got another free day out of it. And so that was really amazing. That trip was definitely a bucket list trip. In terms of the final cost breakdown, we ended up spending a lot of money at the resort just because we were paying $500 each dinner. And also because the yacht transfers themselves were really expensive. And then I did pay some money in taxes and fees for some of the flights. And I did happen to buy a few of the points. And so I think altogether, if I'm being honest, we spent $10,000 out of pocket. And that's with us buying $500 dinners and sparing no expense that way. And it would have cost over $35,000. So we saved over $25,000 by booking this trip in advance with a lot of planning, using credit card points and miles and free night certificates. So if I had to tell you any tip, whether you want to go to the Maldives or you want to go somewhere else, it's book the flights early, figure out what airlines you want to fly on, figure out what airlines go to and from your destination, book them early when they drop, put your expenses on credit cards that will help you accumulate the points that you need so that you can transfer those points directly from your credit card portal into the airline or the hotel partner that you want. In my case, I transferred American Express points points directly from my American Express credit card portal into Qatar Airlines and into Singapore Airlines. I ended up canceling those Qatar flights. So actually they were canceled. And so I ended up getting my points back and my money back from that. But I ended up booking the Singapore Airlines flights, and I was able to do that at the last minute because I had credit card points and because I was able to transfer them out from my American Express card into Singapore Airlines. And so book the flights early is my point. Hotel, if you know what hotel you want to stay in, like I knew that I did, and you want to stay in a luxurious hotel like I did, figure out what hotel chain it's affiliated with and figure out how you can accumulate maybe some free night certificates with that hotel chain so that you can redeem it for a free hotel stay. Consider credit card welcome bonuses. That's how I was able to accumulate a free night certificate or two for the Hilton program, as well as some credit card points. Always have a backup plan for flights. I spent so much time and energy booking our Qatar Airways flights a year in advance, only for a month before the trip for there to be a war in the Middle East. So that was disappointing. I really wanted to fly on Qatar. I ended up booking backup flights, like I said, on Singapore Airlines. I booked the flight maybe a few weeks before we landed into LA, and then I had to book a Delta flight from LA back to Atlanta. So it was kind of a lot of flying and a lot of logistics, but at least I had the credit card points for backup flights and I was able to book that and be safe. And so another tip is to consider having a backup plan for your flights. And I forgot to mention, tell the hotel what you're celebrating. So we did this whole trip because it was my boyfriend's birthday. I sort of forgot to mention that. Each hotel that we stayed at, whether it was the Waldorf or the Conrad, I told the hotel that it was his birthday and we got all of these perks. When we were at the hotel in Singapore, they decorated the room with a happy birthday sign. They gave him a free cake. We had all these little goodies and fruits. When we stayed one night in San Francisco before we left on our flight to the Maldives, the San Francisco hotel gave us free champagne and chocolates and fruit. When we were in the Waldorf, about a few days before we left, they asked us all of these questions like our shoe size and our robe size. And they also gave us like free wine and food when we were there. I think his birthday was one of the reasons why we ended up getting upgraded for free into that grand overwater villa. And so if you're going to book a hotel stay, please be sure to email the concierge or tell the hotel what you're celebrating because you might get some free perks. My final thoughts, I know this episode was long, was that this trip was extremely expensive, even with the discounts and the hotel perks, but it was way cheaper than what I would have paid cash. And so if you are like me and you want to be able to have this amazing hotel stay and you want to be able to stay in the Maldives and you know it's going to cost $35,000 and you don't have the money to spend $35,000 on a vacation, I would encourage you to get into the points and miles world like me because you might be able to, in my case, save $25,000 on this vacation. Maybe in the past, you would have had to save up years in advance for this sort of thing. And maybe it was something that you did on a 10-year anniversary or for your 50th birthday. But for me, I was able to do it now. My philosophy on travel is like tomorrow is not promised. I have unfortunately had a lot of people near and dear to me be diagnosed with cancer. And unfortunately, some of them have passed away. And so I have been reminded a lot recently, actually, that life is short. You can say, oh, I want to take that trip in 5 years or 10 years or when I'm retired. But for me, I know that tomorrow's not promised. And if I can make luxurious travel more affordable, then I want to be able to do that. And so take the trip, book it in advance, try to find ways to make it more affordable for you as I did. And hopefully you can use some of the tips that I have mentioned in this episode to help you. Utilize credit card points and free night certificates way cheaper than paying cash. I had this once in a lifetime experience. I was able to make what started off as like a random wish into a reality because I was able to plan in advance. And would I do it again? Would I go through all this trouble again? Absolutely. Saving $25,000 on a vacation? Yes, sign me up. I will do this again. Would I go back to the Maldives? Yes, but I would probably stay a little longer. We stayed 4 nights because we already stayed 2 nights in Singapore. Part of that was because my boyfriend doesn't have unlimited vacation time. And unfortunately, he had some health challenges that used up a lot of his vacation days. And so he wasn't able to stay longer. But if I were able to book another trip around the world, like to Bora Bora or Seychelles or whatever, then I would totally want to stay at least 5 or 6 nights. So if you've ever dreamed of the Maldives, I want you to know that it's more doable than you think. Yes, it takes a ton of planning, but if you are willing to put in the work and if you're willing to do the planning, it could save you thousands of dollars. I know that I talked a lot. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at wealthmindedmd@gmail.com. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I hope that you found this episode helpful. If you have any tips or anything, feel free to hit us up. Thanks for listening if you made it this far, and I hope this information was helpful. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I can't wait to come back to you again next week.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Brooke. I'm recording a little disclaimer for my mommy, Dr. Brittany Halford, and her friend, Dr. Lisha Taylor. Just so you know, they're not financial advisors, tax professionals, lawyers, or financial planners. Everything you hear is for education and entertainment. It's not strict financial advice, you know. So use your best judgment, chat with a tax professional, and all those other people that you need to talk to. Thanks for tuning in today. Keep cruising on your journey to wealth and wellness. Bye-bye.